Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the auction question session. This has been run by the show for the last 3 years, and it's been a very popular session and educational for everybody, myself included. Today on the panel, I'm really pleased to say we have Julie, who runs Creative Legals. They're a boutique firm of lawyers and specialise in property auctions. Do you want to say just a couple of words?
Yeah, absolutely. We haven't used these before. Very interesting. I'm Julie Condliffe. I am a solicitor specialising, as David said, in auction. So I help people who want to buy at auction understand the legal pack, avoid, the common pitfalls, and I also help people who are selling or buying at auction. I've written 3 best-selling books on auctions, and I've bought over 42 properties myself at auction. So I think I know roughly what I'm talking about when it comes to auctions.
Dominic?
Dominic Farrell, I know a few people in here, I can spot you. I also have written a best-selling book about property auctions. It's now in its 2nd edition. It's called Property Auctions, strangely enough. You put it into Google, it's right at the top. Its 2nd edition was published 2 weeks ago. We do lots of things really, but I guess this is about auctions, so we specialise in property auctions with 2 different companies. One's Distressed Assets, which looks at nationwide. It also runs training workshops for people. And we have Tuna Fish Property, which specialises in distressed assets in Liverpool, and it's a full-service property company.
Yeah, hi guys, I'm Henry Davis, and I also feel I need to plug my book, sorry. So I have 3 businesses. I'm an author, and I wrote a book called The Truth About Property. It's on Amazon. And I also present training for the NRLA, and I present their property investment course. It's called The Key to Property Investment. But my main business is property training and property development, and obviously as a property trader and developer, I have bought and sold many properties over the years at the auction, and I know David's software extremely well. I live on his website.
Thank you. There's £50. Yes, Hi, David Sandeman. I founder and managing director of Essential Information Group. Hopefully some of you have come across us. If any of you have taken out an auction passport to register to bid, that's us. And I hopefully there's some subscribers who look at our data. I really enjoy these panels. We get lots of interesting questions. What I'd like you to do is I'll invite questions. I'll repeat the question so that anybody at the back or who's hard of hearing can hear it, just to make sure everybody does. And I'll ask the panel to just give their brief comments on it. So who'd like to ask the first question? Don't be shy. I'm not going to offer 50 quid for the first question. We haven't come again. Sir.
Hi, my name is Sunil, and I'm a current training solicitor in the real estate industry. Julie, it's more a question for you.
Just 1 second. The gentleman's a trainee solicitor in the real estate industry, and he's got a question for Julia.
Yes. I'm looking to start investing soon, and one of the legal processes involved in the auction is the service of a Section 42 notice. I'm just sort of wondering how often you come across that and what the legal implication issues are that you experience.
Sure, yeah.
Gentleman wanted to know consequences of a Section 42 notice, which is to do with lease extensions. Do you want to cover that up? Yeah.
Absolutely. Really great question, Sunil. I don't like this. I'm going to try to move it here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That easy?
Yeah, should we try that? Sunil, really good question. So in terms of Section 42, as David has alluded to, that relates to when you want to extend a lease. So sometimes at auction, we buy properties that perhaps have got like a shorter lease length term remaining. So in those circumstances, you want to see whether there's actually a Section 42 notice in the legal pack, because the Section 42 notice will then enable you to kickstart the lease extension process. If you buy a property with a short lease that hasn't got a Section 42 in the legal pack, you may have to wait a period of about 2 years before you can kickstart the process yourself. Disadvantages from a lending perspective, lenders would probably prefer Section 42, so really good point to pick up on. You also asked about my experience. My experience is very, very varied, and I don't really want to hog the panel and spend a lot of time talking about my Section 42 experience, but I hate it. Absolutely hate when landlords put Section 42 notices in the legal pack, and they put like a premium of something super duper low, And then after that, when the counter notice is served, it's totally different. So I can get into the intricacies of that, but I don't...
It's a flag.
It is, isn't it? It's a red flag.
Yeah,
I think that's the long and short of it. I hope I answered your question, Sunil. Thank you.
I just said, end of last year, I bought a property, 48 years left on the lease. The previous owner had served a Section 42 notice. Now I'm deciding, we're only 10 grand apart, it's on the price, whether to go ahead or not. Because I've got a feeling that actually, you know, the direction of flow with the government's view towards short leases and landlords is maybe to take away some of these horrendous fees in doing that. So I'm kind of thinking I'm not going to bother buying the lease extension and wait till it's made a lot less expensive for us. But that's my view. Next question. Come on, you know you're asking. Don't be shy. Sam.
Yeah, Sam Fungo. I just want to get the panel's view on modern method of auction. Because I expect and I was hoping that modern method of auction would actually help open up the auction market. But being delivered by estate agent, I find quite a few issues with it. I don't know what the panel thinks about modern method of auctions.
Okay, I'll just explain for those who don't know. Modern method of sale is a way whereby basically the vendor pays no fees to the estate agent to sell the property, which sounds great if you're a vendor, not having to pay an agent's fee. How the auctioneer generates the fee is by charging a buyer's premium, typically 5% plus VAT, 6% of the hammer price. And what happens is companies like I Am Sold, Pattinson's, etc., will offer this service to estate agents and they split the fee. Estate agents love it because the moment the gavel falls, the money's taken from the buyer's credit card and they will get their share of the buyer's premium the day the hammer falls. In the estate agency world, they've got to wait until the property sells and completes. So it's very popular. The flat I bought, the short lease, was a modern method of sale. And what happens is when the hammer falls, all you have bought, you have not exchanged, well, very rarely you've exchanged contracts on the property on the fall of the gavel, but you bought an option to exchange complete on the purchase of the property within 56 working days from when the contract of sale is sent out to you. So that's basically what it is.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like the modern method of auction. Most people hate it, but I absolutely love it because it puts off loads of buyers, because all the buyers are worried about is all the fees. I don't care less about the fees. I'm looking at the overall price I pay, and I find personally, in some cases, from my personal experience, sometimes properties are cheaper via this way because so many people hate it. And if you notice recently, there's been lots of posts on social media slagging it off. I love all this because it's putting everybody off buying properties from this way. People get obsessed about the fees. It doesn't matter about the fee. I couldn't care less who gets a fee. It's the overall price that you pay that matters.
Yeah. Yes, I was talking to a developer yesterday and he had exactly that sentiment. He loves it.
I don't have any comments on that, but I'm intrigued by that. I'm actually going to start looking for modern day. Oh, yeah, well, you said it now. It's all out there.
Giving away my insider tricks here, guys. Don't listen.
I completely agree with Henry about you need to take all fees into account for the overall purchase price. There's absolutely no question about it. But my book is 283 pages long and there's about 2 pages for modern method of auction. So it's all about personal preference, I guess. My tactics at live auction depends on a lot of factors, and we need to sometimes move very, very quickly to get decisions. So, you know, modern method, whatever suits you. Unconditional auctions seems to suit me better, and there's some sort of halfway house, you know, in between.
Next question.
Just before we move on, if you don't mind,
Yep.
I just want to make a comment to what Dominic said about the fees of the matter. Fortunately, most of the people that are in this room, they do BRR, they buy, refinance, but when you go further up north and you're paying 10,000 fee to buy a 90,000 property, that's 10%. Inland revenue, what get registered might not be high enough. It will be a huge percentage of money that's not registered on the land registry as a value of the property. So when you go to refinance or you go to sell it in 6 months or a year, the person that's buying it goes to land registry, and all they see is 90,000. They don't register the fact that you paid £12,000
Well, then they're breaking the rules.
So I think that, for me, is one of the main problems.
No, you're misunderstanding. The fee that you pay on a modern method of auction, that fee is subject to to stamp duty. And if they haven't registered that, then they're breaking the law, and they have to register that fee, if that's what you're referring to. So if they haven't registered that fee, then they've broken the law. And HMRC will retrospectively come after them because they check all the transactions. They have to.
Let's move on. Next question. There's one on the tip of your tongue, sir. He's got a question.
If nobody wants to ask.
Well,
Question. Financing at an auction, like bridging loans and stuff, what's your experience of those, maybe in the early days?
well, yep, bridging finance is used a lot to get the deals through. The company we work closely with called Together Money, their typical terms are they'll lend 70% of the hammer price. They'll use the hammer price as a valuation. If your firm of lawyers you use has three or more partners, they will accept them to take the security for them, and the decisions they make will be very quick. Get decisions same day from them. And the fact that they're lending 70%, there's 30% equity if it goes wrong for them. And the rates are reasonably competitive, given that you can phone them up, get a decision within 2 hours, and you then armed to go and bid as long as you've got the other 30 or probably near 40% by the time you pay stamp duty and other fees to take occupation of it. But it oils the wheels of working, but you've got to make sure you've got an exit strategy for it as well.
Yeah, I agree completely with what David has said. And I think that most of my clients who struggle when it comes to completion is when it's auctions, we've got a very tight timeline, do we not? We've got 14 days, 28 days, sometimes longer. So when it comes to finances, please do put your financial house in order before you bid. Because some of the challenges are, people have got like a broker and they say, yeah, we can get you a mortgage with whoever, Halifax or whoever it is. Great. If it's a normal conveyancing transaction, there will be ample opportunity to do that. But if it's an auction conveyancing matter, you may not have enough time to do that. So you need to be super duper careful. What you're told by a broker, and if there are any brokers here, I love you, but what you're told by a broker may not necessarily be accurate when it comes to timelines. So my clients, when it's like a quarter to completion, the mortgage is not happening, then we end up contacting Together Finance or whoever other bridger, to help. So just sort it out before it becomes problematic when it comes to money.
It's generally easier to get a bridge than it is to get a mortgage. And what we find is, and Together probably is the company most people use, to be honest, is that depending on what your strategy is, I know some people who stay on the bridge for a while because their strategy is BRRR. And so the idea is you pay your 10% deposit plus the auctioneer's fees. If it's a 28-day completion, which is normal, the bridge kicks in. That then allows people to do the refurb. And then once the refurb is done, they come out of the bridge. What bridges are really looking for is your ability to exit, what everyone else has said on the panel here. But in terms of finance, bridging is useful, very much so, if you have assessed all the risks.
Yeah, have an exit plan. I nearly lost 3 of my properties early on in my investment journey. I took bridging, I didn't have exit plan. So what everyone is saying here is accurate. Have an exit plan.
There's a big nuance here, guys, though. Mortgage offer is completely misleading. It doesn't mean a mortgage offer. It means zero, zilch. And why do I say that? Because it should be renamed mortgage offer subject to our legals and subject to our Rottweiler solicitors going through every single thing. So the way I de-risk on bigger bids, and I bought something on Thursday at the auction for 690k. So I went to Together in this case, and I asked them who their solicitors was. So their solicitors effectively checked the legal pack because I had what's called dual representation. And it was the only way for sure that I effectively had pre-agreed legals, because together as the legal team checked the legal pack, not my solicitor. And that was the best way I could work out of de-risking it. But be very careful of lenders, because they can let you down at the last minute. And if you're not experienced at reading legal packs, in fact, I'm highly experienced at reading legal packs, and I cannot get my head around with them. I cannot. After many years, I'm still never quite sure. And the problem you're going to have is, do you want to spend £1,000 on legal fees for something you won't probably win? So it's a catch-22. The auction system is designed to catch out people who are not experienced. And that's the way the system works. That's just the way it is, the nuances of it, because otherwise traders like me and developers experienced couldn't make any money from the auction.
Henry mentioned a very interesting point, legal packs. Just like the audience, this will be my turn to ask a question. What do you think the most important document in a legal pack is? Do you want to call out some ideas?
Title deed.
Sorry? Title deeds, yeah.
Special conditions.
Special conditions of sale? Sorry? Okay. Any other things? Agreement? I'm afraid you're wrong. The most important document in a legal pack is the one which has been left out because it contains bad news. So some people read a legal pack thinking everything's fine, but supposing you're buying a flat and there aren't 3 years of management accounts there for the flat, there could be horrendous arrears. When you tick a box, when you register to bid, you'll be saying, I've read the legal pack and I've asked for any documents I felt I ought to get to see. And if you haven't done that, if you're buying a leasehold flat, you need to be seeing what the management accounts are. So just because everything looks fine in the legal pack, there may be documents which just didn't make it there, because it's just going to put people off buying the property. Watch out for that.
Generally, you see a lot of people selling leasehold apartments at auction. We put 3 in ourselves on Friday. One of the big issue, David is spot on. If you've got a trouble with a block manager or a freeholder and all sorts of issues around service charges, if you go through a normal conveyancing process, all these documents are requested by the solicitor, but an auction is caveat emptor. So literally, gavel goes down, you're committed. If there are issues with apartments, as David's just said, the best way to sell them is by auction. So I actually say in my book, I would actually avoid buying leasehold apartments at auction when all these key bits of information are missing.
Yeah. And just to add to that point, if you're buying a flat or if you're buying a property which has got a tenant in situ, if the tenant is in arrears of rent, the common auction conditions provide that you will pay the arrears to the vendor. So if you are buying, thinking, wow, this is a great property, it's 100 grand, he's paying or the agreement's for 10 grand a month, and he hasn't paid for 6 months, you're going to be handing over 6 grand to the vendor on completion. So buying tenanted, make sure the rent's up to date. Otherwise, you'll be taking that liability on.
Yeah, it's the legal pack. It's the catch-22 situation. It's really difficult, even for me as a trader who's bought lots of stuff. What I can tell you from my personal experience, when I sell properties at the auction, what I've noticed is that anything that the owners or that's really dodgy, I put it in the legal pack in about 3 different sections, and I put it in bold so that nobody come back to me and said, oh, we couldn't find that, or you hid that. And even after that, I find still when I sell something, people always ring me and says, oh, you never told me about all this stuff. I said, did you read the legal pack? And he said, no. I say, okay, goodbye, the conversation is over.
Yeah, reading the legal pack is very, very important, as everybody here said, and they're making my job super easy for me. So you just need to come to me and I'll read the legal pack for you. It's a service that we provide as a practice. Yeah, thank you for asking. Starting from £100 plus VAT. But it's starting from...
I'll take that at £100.
What do I do with the VAT?
There's
I
plenty
need
of
to
seats
pay
over here.
tax.
Do come in. Plenty
Oh,
of seats.
good Lord.
Sorry, just to support what Julie's just said is no one in here really should be reading a legal pack without any legal training and then bidding on it at auction. You're going to really come a cropper. I get people coming to me saying, look, I bought this at auction. There are some issues with it. What do you think? and then I just think, why did you buy it? So to support Julie, if you're going for a property at auction, give Julie a ring and get the legal pack read.
Cheers, Dom.
Question there, sir.
£100.
Leasehold property, would you therefore say it's better to focus on freehold properties without any tenants in it?
No, I mean, Dominic says that. I would make sure that I get written proof that the tenant is up to date and get the tenant payment history. I'd want to see, has it come in on the first of the
They
month or
won't
whatever?
reply to your inquiries.
Well, then you've got to take a judgment call on that.
Well, sometimes if you've got a very good relationship with the auction house, then the auction house will get hold of the seller and will agree that no rent arrears will be required on exchange, completion. And you've got it in written form, and there's someone to sue if it all goes Pete-tong. But that's what you want to do. As David said, it's all there in the sort of conditions of sale. You do have to pay these rent arrears unless you've got that email saying either there's no rent arrears or there are rent arrears, and the seller won't come after you for them.
Yeah, just one, thank you, you're absolutely right there. Just one extra point that I think is really worth noting. The conditions themselves, they stipulate that if there is an arrears schedule in the legal pack. So normally the special conditions will also refer to a schedule of arrears. So if there's a schedule of arrears, then you have been put on notice. You'll be responsible for those arrears. But if there isn't a rent schedule, I can help you fight it successfully. So that's the long and short of it. So I don't want you guys to be concerned about buying properties with tenants, thinking all of a sudden you're going to be responsible for all the arrears. No, you won't. Yes? So if there's an arrears schedule, then worry. If there isn't, don't worry. If there is an arrears schedule, like my good friend has just said, do speak with the auctioneers, raise inquiries beforehand. Yes?
Seats over here. The other side. Thank you. Stay there.
Asking a solicitor to review the legal pack, how do you have to proactively ask the solicitor, can you please check this, and that, or it's just a case of asking the solicitor, can you just let me know what issue?
Lady asked, I think basically, what questions should you be asking a solicitor you instruct to review the legal pack for you?
And especially when tenant in situ, how will we know, let's say I want to get rid of them after I bought, how will we know we will be successfully evict them? There's no glitch in the tenancy.
Hand over to Julie on that one.
Yeah, sure. So it depends on the solicitor that you ask. If you ask a solicitor who's not experienced in auction matters, then list every question that you need to be answered, because if you don't ask, you do not get. But if you're instructing a solicitor like me, just simply take my business card or one of these leaflets, and then what we do is we have a conversation with you before we read the legal pack. Why do we have a conversation with you? We want you to be able to tell us the questions that you've got so we can answer them. But not just that, we also want to know what you want to use the property for. Do you want to develop? Do you want to extend it? And if you do, what do we then look out for? We look at the local authority search. We see the drainage search. We look at whether there's a septic tank within the boundaries of the property. And if the septic tank is close to where you want to extend, we say, actually, you can't. Or if you're going to do it, you're going to need a build over agreement. It's going to take you a bit more. We look at whether there are any restrictions that could restrict you from doing whatever it is you want to do. So in summary, we're brilliant at what we do. So just instruct us.
I
like it, Julie.
No, I absolutely agree. The solicitor who looked after your grandmother's will is not the person to be acting for you buying an auction unless she is an auction specialist. It really is, you have maximum 21 working days or 15 working days to get it sorted. Most of them wouldn't have finished doing due diligence on you in time.
True.
Actually, my next question is, what's the turnaround time for
good question. I've been instructed on the morning of the auction, and someone said to me, it's lot 200. Julie, can you do this? I get it done. So we can do it in as little as 24 hours or less.
That the seller doesn't have to tell you all the information. Like if you raise some inquiries, is it true that they don't have to give you all the answer?
If it's an auction, then I don't think you're able to contact the seller directly. So your best friend is going to be the auctioneer. So you can ask as many questions as you want of the auctioneer. The vendor does not have a real duty to respond, but it will be good to. And I think most sellers want to sell, so they are going to respond, unless if they've got something, to hide. So I would still ask the question.
Next question. Gentleman there.
These questions have to be asked before the auction, isn't it? Because once the auction is done, then the hamlet is gone, and then they may not have to answer any questions, yeah?
Yeah, well, the gentleman's asked the questions you should be asked. Would you be asking them before the auction? Absolutely. After the event, you're under contract, so you'll be at the mercy of what the contract says and the way the vendor deals with that. So, question? Oh, okay.
So can I just go back to the point about bridging to mortgage? What we're finding of late is a lot of risk transfer from surveyors who represent the mortgage company. So it's not uncommon now to have a surveyor from a mortgage company come along and then ask for further surveys, specialist surveys. So damp and timber seems to be the big one at the moment. So he'll say, we want a damp and timber survey, and then even a structural survey on something. I'll give you a very, very quick example. We bought a property not so long ago when we had a sort of damp and timber survey. Fine, it's not a big deal. But if you read the surveyor's report for the mortgage company, you'd think this property was falling down. So you end up having to get a structural engineer in who produces a report, and then you then have to cost the structural engineer's report and to actually put right what the mortgage surveyor actually said was £979. So that's just something to bear in mind. When you're doing your due diligence and analysis, you won't necessarily have the surveyor come along these days and go, yeah, that's fine, tick. They may well say, well, we want a damp and timber survey, structural engineers.
This is on a bridging.
Bridge to mortgage.
Bridge to mortgage from a specific lender who is doing the same transaction for the two things, yeah. Because on the normal bridge, they probably wouldn't do that, would they?
Doesn't even go.
Yeah.
Just to make it clear to everybody,
Yeah. The mortgage company.
Gentleman over there.
Yeah, so my question is really post-auction, if property didn't sell during the auction, does the policies of auction still apply after that?
Jen asked if the property doesn't sell at auction, does the policy?
Auction conditions.
No, auction conditions still apply. Yes, you can buy the property under auction conditions and under the auction contracts. All the rules, special conditions would apply to that, unless you negotiate something different, which a lot of people do.
Sorry, can I just add into that just very quickly? It doesn't mean because a property hasn't sold at auction, it's a dud. If you look at page 250 of my book, Christmas of 2023, you wouldn't believe the deal we got after the auction. They're not duds, worth bearing in mind.
Oh yeah, on that point, David's website is really, really good in terms of seeing the properties that have been to auction and are coming back again, and they're being recycled again and again. And I think sometimes that could be maybe orangish, reddish flag. It really depends on why a property is coming. Yeah, Scarlet will do, but I'm sure David will educate you on that a bit more. But I always say to my clients, go to David's website. If this property keeps coming on and on, again and again, there normally is an issue, potentially.
For those of you who've got to borrow, it's eigroup.co.uk, and you can set yourself up with a free trial. See?
So imagine I'm an idiot, which is probably quite easily believable. What tools do I need?
Great start to a question. Imagine I'm an idiot. Was that your chat line?
I've used worse. We've already touched on some of the experts that you need in your arsenal. So we've got a lawyer, a finance team, so you know how you're going to do it. So before you go to auction, as you're preparing, what tools do you need in your arsenal? What team of people around you? And then there's probably a second part again, if you're going into it first time. It's easy to say what to go for, but actually it's stay away from this. We've already touched on probably leasehold, but is it listed buildings or, I don't know, glass elevators or anything? What are the things to say if you're going to do it first time, stay clear of?
I think Dominic and Henry would be best placed to answer that.
I'll go first. You see, me as a property trader, I'm looking for complications and problems because I know I can usually resolve those problems. There's very few things that are not fixable. You know, one of the few things that actually makes a property unbridgeable, unmortgageable, unsaleable, not unsaleable, would be if there's a tenant in situ with, for example, they don't have an AST, or they just don't have any contract. I sold the property in the auction where the tenants were, commercial tenants were in there 15 years. So I would struggle to get those out. So in terms of looking for the team, so what I would normally do, I would normally be speaking to at least 2 or 3 of my lenders. And I would be pitching the deal to them saying, this is coming up, I'm going for the auction, what can you offer me? Because out of those 3 lenders, you'll end up getting one good deal, or one of them might have a problem with the property. So as regards listed building, I mean, they're a lot more expensive to develop, and that's a specialist thing. So for you guys starting out, I think the best way to make money in property, from my experience, is always go for a full-end refurbishment. Because the worse condition the property is in, it's the more you have a bigger opportunity to create value, to add more rooms, to add extensions. In my case, I do big HMOs. So it's a hard question to ask because it'd be kind of based on your experience in terms of what to go for. For me, I'm looking for problems, complications, potentially properties that nobody else wants, etc. That's been in the auction 3-4 times. That would probably be right up my street. But for you guys, that might be different, you know.
Julie from Legal Spirit. Oh, Dominic.
Yeah, I mean, Henry's spot on, but you've got to remember Henry's been doing this for many, many years. He is an expert. I think if you're starting off, you need to have a very, very simple strategy. And it's the age-old thing of don't run before you can walk. So there are things, when I go through, I mean, I was talking to some of the people in here not so long ago in a room in London. And when I go through my sort of filtering process for properties, I just knock things off straight away. So straight away, I'll knock off leasehold. I'm not even interested in looking at leasehold. I know the leasehold thing's going to change, but I'm just not interested. Knock them all off. There are other things that I can just knock off. Grade 2, I own a Grade 2 listed building. No. So knock that off. And just keep coming all the way down. Eventually, I end up with, say, let's say it's a reasonable sized auction, like Sutton Kirsch's reasonable sized auction. Maybe I end up with 10, 12, 15. And generally, it will fit a particular template. It'll generally be freehold. It'll generally be a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom terrace, and generally it'll be in 1 or 2 or maybe more postcodes. But I think the key is to learn while you keep the risk relatively low. If you're going to make mistakes, make them with low numbers. Don't make mistakes with big numbers.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dominic. Let's walk before we sprint. That works. Now, in terms of Dominic and Henry, they're highly experienced in buying properties, and they've been doing this for long. So I think the question is, when you're starting, what really do you want to look out for? From a legal perspective, coming back to David, worry about legal packs that are scanty. You don't have a lot of information. You've got very, very little information. So worry about the missing documents. So if you've got a legal pack that's not, sizable, or that hasn't got a lot of information, let's worry about that. Let's also start to think about the title documentation. Is the person who's selling actually the registered proprietor? If they're not the registered proprietor, do they actually have a right to sell? That's very important. I work with a lot of traders, so sometimes they do back-to-back transactions, and they're not yet the registered proprietor. But in our legal packs, we provide enough information for you to be able to point to why and how that person is selling. Yes? When you're reading this, shall I carry on?
Please do.
Thank you. So when you're reading the special conditions, think about things like costs. Yes? Read through that. Read through words and numbers. Nowadays, people don't put the costs in like figures, they put them in words. So read and understand, because sometimes you end up paying 2.5% in legal fees, 2.5% in da-da-da-da-da. Quite a lot to think about. I could go on, but I'm going to stop.
Mentioned special conditions, and several of you mentioned that as a very important document. It is, and it's a place where vendors will put in extra fees which you are down to pay that are in the contract. I want to have a game of top trumps with the panel. I want them all to think of the worst special condition terms they've seen and what the value of the property was in terms of extra fees.
Could I ask Julie a question first? If that's
Sure.
all right, David. It's a thing that I'd like to know.
Yeah.
So, and I think David maybe could talk about this thing about property traders. Some auction houses are rife with property traders, and they're basically playing on naive people. They're providing enough information in the legal pack to be legally compliant, whatever that would be, but not enough information. They're hiding stuff or whatever. So the first question is, Julie, how would you know the seller isn't the seller? Because sometimes they blank out the name. So if I'm buying a property, how do I know if the seller isn't the seller? And if he's flipping it on, which would give me a red flag, because anybody flipping on another property, it's a red flag.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Henry, and I think we should explore that in a bit more detail. But starting with a pertinent point as to how can you tell. If the title deeds are reducted, which they normally are, the official copies, they are just £3 at Land Registry. So as part of our legal pack review, and I'm not selling legal pack review, I'm being very serious right now because this is important. So you can download the title deeds yourselves from Land Registry, and then you'll be able to see whether the proprietor is the person who's
But how
selling.
do
At
you
least
know
you'll have
if it's somebody flipping it on or not?
How do you know if it's somebody flipping it on
Because
or not?
if it's an a flipped-on sale where somebody's bought a property, they've exchanged on it, and they're reselling it in the auction.
Oh, I
Does that
see.
happen, David? Lots?
Yeah. That
Yeah.
happens a lot. So normally you find that in the wording of the special conditions. So if it's a good solicitor that's dealing with the matter, they will say in the special conditions, the seller is a contractual seller, or the seller is or the seller is not yet the registered proprietor. So on exchange, you'll be given AP1, TR1, or whatever. That should be in the special conditions. But also, if you're working with a reputable auctioneer, every time before we send the legal pack through, obviously, David's website, the auctioneers will say, Julie, does the vendor have the right to sell? Could you give us the evidence that the vendor's got the right to
Why
sell?
would anybody sell something they don't have the right to sell? That goes
Well,
without saying. That would be
do you know what, Henry?
pointless exercise.
Well, you and I could speak all day. So what's happening? I'll give you an example. I'll give you one example. I've got somebody who instructed me on a sale, and I'm saying, what evidence do we have? So it's an unregistered title.
Yes.
Unregistered title, very, very interesting. Not only is it unregistered, we don't have the title deeds. So the title deeds are missing. The person who owned the property is deceased. So is their estate dealing with this? So a trader bought that property, and a trader wants me to sell that property at auction. I can't do that, but they will find another solicitor. Oh, sorry. Explain unregistered. Okay, so unregistered land is where, this is a tricky question, is where it's not registered.
At Land Registry?
At Land Registry. So you know some questions are so easy and you think, okay, am I missing something?
As a result, you can't pay your £3 and see who's on the title deeds. That's
Yeah,
the bottom line.
100%.
And you have to rely on somebody saying, no, honestly, that did belong to my family for the last 100 years.
Yes.
Honest, Gov.
And also what you've got to realise is there's a huge backlog at the Land Registry at the moment. So I got a phone call from the auction house on Friday. We put 3 properties in, and Helen, who's the sort of administrator there, said, we've just looked it up at the Land Registry. You don't own it, Tom. I said, well, we did a debt for asset swap, and we do, Helen. And basically, our solicitor sent the TR1 to the auction house, and that obviously resolves the issue. But just to sort of my little sort of add in as a non-lawyer is some of the stuff that you pay your £3 for isn't up to date.
No, we don't.
And also with things like unilateral notices and everything else, they're not on there because they're in the queue.
Yes, you are right. They are in the queue. But the beauty of the Land Registry is you've got what is called a Land Registry guarantee. If you download a document on the day, whatever date is on there, you, in law, are entitled to rely on that as the truth. Full stop. That's that. But like Dominic said, there might be some other things pending. But in terms of title, you're entitled to rely on the Land Registry guarantee. That then differs from the unregistered land, which we were talking about a minute ago. With unregistered land, you have a holy Bible of title deeds, like we used to do way back when. Those are the title deeds. So that's another one to maybe cross off your list if you're starting in property, because with unregistered title, what you want is you want an epitome of title. So an epitome of title is a whole list of documents dating back 15 years to be able to trace, to say who owned this when, how did they pass it to this person, and to the next, and to the next. So if you're going to buy an unregistered title, you really need to know what you're doing. So if you're a first-time auction person, I would say perhaps shy away from that.
If for another reason you're on a hard deadline because the auction is on a set date, unlike if it's private treaty sale, well, that the hopeful exchange completion date gets pushed out while you sort the issues out. There's no way it's going to get done in maximum 15 days.
100%.
I had a question. Sorry, anything else on this?
No, it's fine.
Okay. Question over there?
The answer to my question, because initially I was going to say, so in the instance of the example we discussed to the panel, would you not suggest a novice should shy away from that kind of opportunity due to the complexity of it? I don't know, Henry, you might have a different view because you seem to be quite...
Personally, no. You're not going to make it in property unless you're going to have to risk stuff. You're going to have to push the boat. If you don't put yourself under pressure, you're just not going to make it in property. You know, if you want safe, this isn't the industry, or if you're somebody that worries at night, you know, in bed, it's just not for you. But to create value, the best deals have come from auction and walking the streets and targeting buildings. I'm a bit more pushing the boat than I know Dominic would be. But
what we tend to do, we do you know, training workshops with this sort of thing. We do an investor profile at the start. Now, in my previous life, I was a soldier. I was a soldier for quite a long time. And what you're forever doing is assessing risk. So if I go over there, will an IED go off? Or if I go that way, will a sniper take me out? That type of thing. So it's the same with property. We've all got a different tolerance to risk.
But the caveat should be, Dominic, sorry to interrupt you.
Sorry.
They can, if they get legal advice, and if they can afford to do that, but that's a catch-22 situation because you don't want to spend loads on legal packs, do you? On stuff you won't buy.
But the issue really is, where are you on the risk spectrum? So if you won't sleep at night, do not get involved in high-risk ventures. You can go to auction and do it pretty low risk. I promise you can do it pretty low risk. If you're looking at a freehold, 2 up, 2 down, in L15, yielding 13.6%, and there's nothing on the title, there's nothing in the environmental searches and everything else, it's a fairly low risk. As long as you've done your risk analysis about your finance, and you've gone through Julie's process with the legal pack, that's on the lower risk spectrum. I think where Henry's at, because Henry's an expert, remember? So Henry's up there taking lots of risk, making lots of money. But if you're just starting off, when you're just starting off, and it's the same with the military. I use the military analogies all the time. When we start off, we're not jumping out of airplanes doing Halo. You know, we're just sort of basically doing your basic training. So I think you need to get a lot of this stuff under your belt, learn the ropes, and then you can scale as you become more experienced.
Gentleman had a question.
Can I just ask you something? I'm getting a sense from this conversation having with the 4 panel members and the people here, the onlookers. Are the auction houses and unregulated, like in the industry? If they're regulated, they would check all this. Like have the basic, because they come under the financial sector, I would imagine. Financial sector is regulated. So are we saying that the auction houses in the first place is unregulated if this is taking place? Registered proprietors are like, how do you flog their...
I think I understand the question. The auctioneers are acting as essentially estate agents and using an auction method to arrive at a price. It's for you and your lawyers to look at the legal position of the property. If they see something which could materially affect a person's decision making, then yes, they should flag it. But they're not going to be doing all the preparation work that Julie's just talked about.
But they don't have the bare bone like levels of being regulated and having.
What's the protection? He's asking, what's the protection? Basically, what kind of protection do we have as consumers from a point of view? Because I know the Misrepresentation Act would be something.
Minimum levels you got to have. Be the title.
How much protected are we as consumers?
Well, you have protection under the Misrepresentation Act. You may be a member of a regulatory body like RICS or Property Mark, but some aren't.
Some of the auctions aren't?
Aren't members of Property Mark, and yes, and aren't members.
In London?
There will be some. I'm not saying just go and have a look. Go on auctioneers' websites and see whether they say the members of Property Mark or RICS.
We've got to remember, auctions are caveat emptor.
Yeah.
I mean,
it is buyer beware. Yeah. So, can we move on to that? The gentleman's been wanting a long time.
You often see small plots of land with permission for 1 or 2 houses in good areas. I'm not talking about sort of part of a field in the countryside or something. And they look quite cheap, they look like a good deal. There's often not a huge amount of demand for them. Do you have any sort of cautionary tales or sort of great experiences of people?
Question was, he's seen plots of land coming up for sale with permission for 1 or 2 houses on them. Is there a cautionary tale? Well, it's due diligence and calling Julie. The number is.
Cautionary tale is, I mean, I've done sort of reasonable sized developments over the years. One was a former care home on the Wirral. It was sort of semi-derelict, really, converted into 13 luxury apartments and a bungalow. The big issue with that is bringing the services in. So you've got to consider, if you're bringing gas in, for instance, it's not cheap. And then you've got to consider, well, if someone's got planning for 2 houses in a decent area and it looks cheap, then, okay, if it's a receiver, because one of the things with auctions that I tend to do is I look to see who the seller is. So when you've got a housing association, a receiver, an administrator, something like that, the rational people are trying to get some cash to pay debts. When it's someone else, then you have to really think to yourself hard, why are they selling it by auction? It could be it's going to cost a fortune to get the services in before you even build anything.
Madam.
You mentioned this property with no unregistered, no title deeds. But I'm just trying to understand how can this even happen in the first place? And the second thing is also what really happened if a person had actually bought it under the auction for that particular property. What actually happens? Where does the money go to? Does it go to the trader? Who actually? What happened to the money?
Lady asked, if somebody did buy under a property which wasn't registered with Land Registry, what would happen, and what would happen to the money if the person parted with it? Julie?
Yeah, sure. That's a very interesting question. So I'm not too sure I'm super clear on the question. So it's based on the story that I told, yes? Okay.
How does it even, in this day and age, how can a property be
allowed to be sold, basically?
Yeah, and
with
not
unregistered
have a title
title.
deed in the first.
Got it. So we had an act that required us to register properties around 1980, but there's some little plots of land and properties that are yet to be registered. So that's not unusual. So in this particular, having an unregistered property in Great Britain is not really unusual at all. It's nothing to worry about. The only reason we said don't start with those when you're starting at auction is because we won't have the opportunity to raise as many questions as we would want to. Yes? So just to make that record clear, unregistered properties are not unusual, okay? Because once you buy an unregistered property, you automatically trigger compulsory registration, as it were. So if all the documents are in order, then the property will be registered in your name. Yes? But if the documents are not in order, you've bought the property at auction, you may be in trouble. So what this trader was trying to perhaps do is to get a no title indemnity insurance. So you could potentially get that, but I really don't want to bombard you with the intricacies of that. So the short answer is, if you buy unregistered land, if all the documents are in order, you can register it. No problem at all. But if the documents are not in order, you will be in a bit of a sticky situation. Yes? Okay, you will have, fine. Because you've paid money, you will have what is called an estate contract in law, because you've parted with the money, you've got this property. So then we start all the litigation to figure out how we can get it registered. So we will speak with Land Registry, we'll liaise with Land Registry, we will speak with the banks, we'll see whether this person had a mortgage before. We'll start piecing everything together, but that's going to take us a long time. Not only is it going to take us a long time, it's going to cost us a small fortune. We're investors, we want to make money, we don't want to lose money, do we?
Yeah. And I wouldn't be looking at unregistered land at auction if I have, as somebody who's not experienced in that. Just that the hard deadline of the auction date really puts you under pressure, and solicitors take days off, etc. You might not get all the answers you want.
I just wondered if it's useful for Julie, just for 1 minute, to mention the indemnity policies that are available for people who buy at auction, because Julie did, but there's a wide range of them, and they are very useful. I think it's worth a minute just to...
I'd like to hear about it.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, thank you very much, Dominic. So when we're buying at auction, we talked about not having a lot of information. So for example, if there aren't any searches, you can get your solicitors to get a no searches indemnity insurance. So that policy will protect you from anything that could crop up or may have cropped up from the searches, yes? And sometimes when you're buying at auction, I think Dominic made a really, really good point in terms of when people are selling at auction, it's always super important to know why. Why is this property being sold at auction? So when it's a receiver, you know. When it's a repossession, you know, yes? But when a property is sold at auction, you can have full title guarantee, which is the best title that you can have. You can have limited title guarantee, which is when receivers are selling and they're saying, we don't know that much about this property, so we are not giving you full title, we're giving you limited, because we've got limited knowledge about the property. You can Google these terms, you'll find the answers, or use ChatGPT or whatever. But full title guarantee, limited title guarantee, or no title guarantee. What can you do if you've got limited or no title guarantee? You can get indemnity insurance. Limited title guarantee, that will protect you for anything that could crop up. Have I missed any other indemnity policies? You can indemnify your life against your husband if you want.
Covenants.
I'm joking.
You need to mention covenants.
Yes, I do. Thank you so much. So restrictive covenants, you can have indemnity insurance in relation to those. You can also have missing title deeds indemnity policy. So yes, we said title deeds are very important, but if some documents are missing, you can also have indemnity insurance. So the long and short of it, if you've got a problem, you can insure it. Yeah. Is that okay? Absolutely. Thank you, Dominic. Covenants, okay. A covenant is a fancy word. Lawyers like using big words because we get paid more money if we sound very educated. So a covenant is a promise. It's a legal promise. That's what it is. So covenants normally are contained in leases or transfer deeds. So one person promises the other to say, okay, when you buy this property, you're not going to hang your clothes outside there. That's a bit far-fetched. But sometimes you get covenants like that. Covenants for use of the property. This is a really good one. So sometimes when we buy properties and they're leaseholds, yes, it says not to use the property other than as a private residential dwelling. And sometimes it goes as far as saying family. So sometimes you struggle with lenders if you want to use it as a buy-to-let, because there is that covenant there. So when you've got transfer deeds and leaseholds, read the covenants. And sometimes the covenants can even restrict what you want to do. I've got a client who bought a property. They wanted to use it as a buy-to-let, but there were restrictions on there to say it can only be used for elderly, residential, or whatever. And those kind of things. And just one last thing, David, please. Yes. Thank you. David's website, it helps you in terms of the tenants, yes? If there are tenants in situ, you could have some tenants who are live tenants. So David's website actually helps split the kind of, do you mind just picking up on that? Because sometimes, yes, you could buy a property and then you could be lumbered with a tenant for life. You wanted to live there or you wanted to rent it out. So that's another big thing. But David will be able to speak about that, because if you use his website, he'll be able to tell you. You can kind of narrow it down to see the kind of tenancies. And this is not a sale thing. It's an important thing.
Yeah. There's lots of at auction we see properties coming tenancies come in lots of different ways. The AST we all know. We then have life tenancies where the tenant can stay there as long as they live. And you buy it knowing that you can't ask them to leave. They'll be paying a registered rent, which is probably about 20% of market value. And you're buying it at a discount in the hope that they will move on at some stage, upstairs basically. and you'll be assessing their health. I bought a house in, I go back, just in Fulham back in, I went to look at a house in about 1992, and it had a sitting tenant, went and met Mrs. Hill very sprightly, and went into the garden, and you try and get a conversation with her, and I looked down the garden, and there was this mound at the end, like that. I said, Mrs. Hill, is that an Anderson shelter? Now, Anderson shelters were built to protect people during the war, and it's an air raid shelter where we go. And she said, yes, laddie, Hitler couldn't get me to leave this property. If you think you can, you've got another thought coming. and a very quick one. I know one lady who was a property was being sold, and she spoke to her daughter, knowing that people were going to be coming to look at it, and she borrowed her daughter's tennis kit. And every time somebody turned up, she'd be in tennis garb with a bat and a ball, so people think, crikey, she's fit. She's not going to peg it today. Yes, my website, thank you, is EI Group, letter I group.co.uk. If you go there, you can register for a free trial, and we'll sort that out. We're also holding an event on the 2nd of May at Dickens Inn. So a whole day workshop, and in the evening we're having a drinks party, and we've got a lot of auctioneers coming to, people like Andrew Binstock, etc., going to be the chance to meet auctioneers. But I'd just like to, before we go back to special conditions, which are extra documents, is a document written by the vendor, by the vendor and their lawyers, and you take subject to them, and as Julie rightly says, sometimes the numbers are disguised, they're put in words. Just what's the worst example?
It's fees, David, and you know what? It's the most. It's one I looked at quite recently, maybe in the last 2 weeks. What's the worst? And I went through, and it was like contributions to legal fees, £5,000. It was literally that ridiculous, and there was something else. Next minute is like 10 grand's worth of special condition fees.
Yeah. 15 grand is the highest I paid in fees.
Right.
But you don't mind paying fees, do you, Henry?
Right. Well, I said we played top trump, so I think I've won. I saw a property going to auction. It was a live stream. We were using our software, so I was following it. A plot of land in Wales was coming under the hammer. It was no reserve. Bidding started at 50. I think the auctioneer bid, as he's allowed to on behalf of the vendor. Somebody, member of the public, bid £100. The gavel was dropped. The comment was made by the auctioneer. Oh, I think you've got a great deal here. And he had a smirk on his face. I dived into the legal pack. First document I went to was the special conditions. So this guy, and I also looked, this guy had not downloaded a single legal document. And the total, I won't bore you with the details, the total fees payable under the special conditions of sale was £16,145. And he would have only discovered that the day after when his lawyer said, you do realise you're on the hook for 16 grand in fees. Do not buy anything without getting somebody like Julie to go through the specials. This person thought they were buying a plot of land where they'd go and camp with the family in Wales for 100 quid. He was on the wrong end of an action for 16 grand. I don't know what happened. I don't want any of you there. So hopefully that scared you all.
But David, you can't misdescribe stuff. That's where you can get people. If somebody puts something in the auction and they misdescribe it, right, and tell you a lie, you can, under the Misrepresentation Act, reverse that contract potentially. And that's where, would I be right in saying most of the people who went to court, it would have been via the Misrepresentation Act to try and get out of the contract?
I'm not sure, but the moment you start getting lawyers involved in litigation, you just add on thousands and thousands. Just don't go there. Make sure you read it with a microscope and ask somebody else to, and get a lawyer to check it. Yeah, they will be. Some of them can be penal. Got one more question.
What about risky lots coming to auction houses? The lots.
Risky lots is in the eye of the buyer. I mean, some people think risky is great. There's not going to be a lot of competition. Other people stick away. So you've got to decide your level where you're comfortable with, and that's different for all of us in the room.
Henry.
I'm Henry, by the way. Nice to meet you. I'm up there as well. Look. I know I'm not good looking or anything,
but you're here.
Just before we close, I did a great thing a few years ago. I joined the NRLA, which is National Residential Landlords Association. It's the best £72 you will spend if you are a landlord. I've got 4 or 5 buy-to-lets. It's fantastic. I had a question. It wasn't litigious. I just want to know the position. You phone them up. You speak to somebody. You're not put on hold. They don't say write in. You talk to somebody who understands Landlord and Tenant Act really, really well. You get common sense, good advice. Just register. Best £72 you'll spend.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I think Henry's got something to say on that.
Yeah, if I can plug the NRLA, I mean, I'm a...
I did that.
Well, yeah, if I can probably plug them better even. So the NRLA do property training courses, and one of them is called Property Refurbishment. The other one is called the Key to Property Investment. And these are the best 2 training courses on the market. Yes. I was just about to say, I'm the presenter of those training courses. And as it happens, I do talk a lot about due diligence. And before Dominic gets a chance to plug his book one more time, I also have a book. It's called The Truth About Property. And I have a full chapter about buying at the auction. And I list every single reason that will stop a property being mortgageable in a property or even breachable. Now, your book might not have that, Dominic. Mine is better than yours.
Tell us the page.
But all joking aside, guys, the property training courses I do, they're 250 quid. If you want to get me privately, I charge 1,250 per person per day. I also do one-to-one mentoring as well on a very selective basis because it's a small part of my business. So guys, that's the plugging over. It was a pleasure to meet you all, and hopefully you've enjoyed today.